You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 142, part 3 of Do Over Week with Jon Acuff. We're talking about how to write a book, sell it, and build an audience. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
It's Do Over Week on the Red Podcast. Jon Acuff is here. The book, Do Over, Rescue Monday, Reinvent Your Work, and Never Get Stuck. Never get stuck. If you read this book, it's available now at Amazon, wherever books are sold. Jon, I want to talk about being Jon Acuff. You're a public persona now, man.
Yeah.
When I hang out with you, everybody's coming up to you. Hey, are you Jon Acuff?
I usually say no. I say, get out of my way. I'm eating dinner. I write books about being kind, but I don't do it in real life. And then I throw water in their face. That's what I usually eat.
Well, what's that like? You're out with your family and somebody recognizes you?
Well, it's just in Nashville, really. I mean, I'm not like, I don't know how, if you're Keith Urban, who's like a real famous person.
I see him out all the time.
Everybody
enough.
does except me. I have zero Keith Urban
See,
sightings.
nobody goes up to him. People go up to you.
Yeah, totally.
And I see him with Nicole. Yeah, we've actually talked about it here on the podcast before.
I'm batting 0 on Keith Urban and Nicole sightings. And everybody's always, I saw him at Whole Foods. They buy an olive oil. That was complicated. And I think, how come I'm not at Whole Foods with Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman? I think part of it is that in Nashville, because I speak at a lot of events in Nashville, you know, if you speak to 1,500 people at a college in Nashville, there's 1,500 people that now know what your face looks like. And the fun part about what I get to do is that it's all positive dream kind of work on something you care about. So when people come up to me, it's, hey, I'm thinking about writing this book, or hey, I'm starting this business. And I get to have this 30-second conversation where I get to go, that sounds fun. Like, you should try that.
It's inspiring, right?
It's inspiring, yeah.
But one of the things that's cool about you that I think a lot of people have maybe issue with themselves is you put yourself out there. Photos, videos, audio. In here where I'm asking you some personal questions on Do Over Week for the
Sure.
Red Podcast. It seems like you've got no fear of doing that. Even your family, you bring your family into this. Laurel mentioned this to me. She said, you know what I think is cool about Jon is that it's the Acuffs. When you support him, you support the Acuffs. And if you look at your Instagram account, it's not just you, it's you, the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, it's my favorite way to communicate. It's my favorite way to write. You know, my dad's a pastor. When he started a church in Massachusetts, that's where we all moved together. It was a big family adventure. And so I think I learned that idea of the family adventure from him. The next thing I'll have to navigate is my own kids having social media. I'll navigate what's it like for my daughters to have their own accounts and all that. But no, Jenny's such a big part of it that I love getting to interact with her in a social space. But I would say that I'm not great at video. Like, I'm really self-conscious about that. And so I think one of the things I'm going to be working on the next couple of years is, how do I do more videos? How do I share more? But like, I have no YouTube presence. And I'm not saying that's going to be a place where I try to blow up, but I have like 4 videos on YouTube. And I'm a public speaker. I enjoy being in front of the camera. It's just I get self-conscious about it online for some reason.
Let's talk about how you built this, because people do see the sizzle reel, as I call it, online. But you have had years and years of hitting the road, writing, interacting with people live. And this is way before Dave Ramsey, when a lot of people found out about you, certainly before you hit the New York Times bestseller, USA Today. Do you have any stories from the road about how you got to be who you are?
I was thinking last night about an event. We did this event where it was probably, I think the year was 2008, and I wanted to do a meetup. And so I just put it out on the internet. Got my in-laws really excited about it. They printed up 1,000 Stuff Christians Like stickers because that was my first blog. And I brought all these Skittles because I'd made a joke about Skittles. And it was this huge thing. And this is where, like, you go, do I have an ego? Without a doubt. I thought there'd be so many people there that the line would be so long that they would need something to do while they waited in line. And I didn't have a book out, by the way, either. Like, there was no, like, I wasn't signing anything. It was just to bask in, I guess, the glory of my presence. And so I printed up a quiz and brought like 100 copies. I went to this room where it was to be held, and I set up everything, and then I just waited. And in 90 minutes, 2 people came, And one was my friend who came to encourage me. And the other one was this guy that said, hey, my daughter reads your blog, call her on the phone. And so he put me on the phone with her. And I was like, hey. We had this awkward 30-second conversation. Then he left. Like, I think he took a sticker.
Yeah.
And I took a photo of the moment and I wrote about it. And it became this huge thing where, like, you go, like, this is the reality. So, like, even in 2008, I'm trying to go, here's what the reality looks like. And, like, a few weeks ago, I did a meetup in Gilbert, Arizona. And I had done one there in December, and the space we were at, Joe's Barbecue, great barbecue place outside of Phoenix, was empty when I was there. They had these great outdoor tables, so I thought, perfect. Pull up this night, there's 100 people out the door for food. And so I go, we're screwed. Like, we're dead. Like, nobody's going to be able to find me. We're not going to have any space. And so a friend who lives there had gotten us some tables in this one section of the restaurant. It took people an hour to go through the line to get back to talk. And it was awkward, like, for them. Like, it was just hard because, you know, you've planned this, hey, I'll talk, it'll be great. And then you're standing up in the middle of, like, a barbecue restaurant. There's a lot of people there that aren't there to hear your ideas about chasing a dream. And that was like a couple of weeks ago. I always tell people, if you want less awkwardness in your life, just have a boring life. Accept the day job, work for 40 years, phone it in. If you want more awkwardness in your life, try to do something interesting with your life and watch the awkwardness get attracted like a magnet.
Well, I love it that you look at this as an experience, even if somebody doesn't show up. People don't talk about when they're on tour, whether they're musicians or comedians or anybody who's going on tour, speakers, that there are always off nights. There are just some markets where you're not going to sell tickets. It's going to rain. O.J. Simpson's going to be chased down the freeway. Some reason they're not going to come out that night.
Well, yeah, in Dallas, and that's like with media. I remember I was supposed to be on TV in Dallas, and the world's first face transplant came out, and he is from Dallas, and his 4-year-old daughter said, Daddy, you look handsome. At that point, I was like, adios, because, like, I'm not going to compete with the first, like, so they bumped me. And so then you fly back home, and you've not done the thing and you can't control that. And I'm not a big believer in, like, when people go, failure is the best teacher. No. Experience is the best teacher. And sometimes you get to learn from success, sometimes failure. But for me, it's either going to become a success or a story. It's a success or a story. And it, you know, the story of the photo of me alone by myself in that became a fun story. And I still get to tell it, and it encourages me, and it encourages hopefully other people.
It's like a rejection letter when you're sending out a book manuscript.
Yeah.
Which
and
you, of course, have never
later.
gotten those, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. I did, to be perfectly honest with you, I did get to jump a lot of levels because of the influence of Dave Ramsey. I had been grinding on my own. I'd been going to events. I'd been bringing 4 books, and I'd sell 2. I did some of that. But then when I joined his team, I had this chance to go from rooms of 80 to rooms of 8,000 in a month's time. It doesn't mean that I still have to work really hard to be good enough to stay on that stage. Dave gave me that opportunity, but if I was horrible, he wasn't going to go, hey, here's 15 more for you to be horrible at.
Right. You have to be ready for the opportunity when it appears.
It's an audition. So I look at all this stuff like an audition.
Yeah.
And if you show up and you crush it, then you get the next little one that's maybe a little bigger. And you just kind of keep trying to build on it.
Let's say somebody wants to be a speaker, wants to have a huge Twitter following, wants to have a book like you do. What are some things that somebody could put into action now? If they've got a message they want to spread, what would be the first step that you would
Work on the
suggest?
strength of the message. Work on the, we want the audience first. That's the wrong thing to work on first. Like, work on the strength of the message. And you can test that with an audience. You can share that with an audience. There's this guy, Adrian Zackheim, smartest person in publishing I've ever met. He's at Penguin. He edited Good to Great by Jim Collins, just a New York legend in publishing. And here's how, like, smart he is, just the way his mind thinks. I showed him a picture of a Lamborghini I'd seen on the street in New York, like one of the ones from, like, Batman, like Aventador or something. It's like $400,000. I showed him the picture, and he said, that car is about the seduction of self and others. And I love that, like, the idea of first you seduce yourself into believing it'll fill you, it'll make you happy, it'll solve all your problems. Like, most people, I show them that picture, they go, wow, cool car. Or like, oh, it's so fast. And he says it's about the seduction of self and others. Brilliant guy. I asked him, what's the most important thing I need to know as a writer? And he said, it's still about the book. He said, it's still about the book. And all the marketing and all that stuff, it's still about the quality of the writing.
Right.
And a good book will sell itself. That doesn't mean you don't push it. You still do all these things. You do pre-order campaigns, all these things. So what I'd say to somebody who right now is going, I want a platform, I want to sell an album, I want to do a book, I want to start a business, like, the quality of the idea is still the most important thing.
Well, certainly for the long term, we talked about on the last episode, which is at redpodcast.com/141, about how there are ways to make a book go to number one in Amazon.
Sure.
Not that difficult. A lot of people have done it, but to have what I call a slow burn, to have impact, that takes work.
Yeah, it takes work and it takes patience and it takes humility because it's not going to be the size you want it right away. It's Friday of my book launch. Like, I know there's a lot of things that I'm going to continue to do. I know, for instance, that next December, I'm going to do a mini push about changing your life because January is a great time to connect with people that want to do a resolution. I know that I'm going to figure out, hopefully, a way in November for it to be a gift idea. I know that I think it's great for college grads, so I'm going to try to, help people connect with it around college graduation season. We want the short-term win so often, and often we cripple ourselves in the short term from ever having a long-term win.
That's another great reason to really be connected with your message, because right now I'll call it opening week for Do-Over. This is the first week it's been available, but you've been working on it for the last 18 months. Getting the ideas together long before that, yet really your work in spreading those ideas is just beginning.
Oh yeah, this is the start.
You better love that idea.
Yeah. During the cover process, for instance, we went through probably 50 covers, and it was a hard process. And Penguin said to me, hey, remember, you're the one that's going to stand next to this. You're the one that's going to see this on shelves. You have to love it.
So they let you make that decision.
Well, they made it with me, but ultimately they said, look, it's your name on it. It's your product. It's your, we want you to love it because you're the one that's going to stand next to it. So that's where, now I love the cover. I think they created an icon. It's something that the motion of the letters and what they did with the colors, I love, but it was a hard process. It would have been way easier at cover number 10 to go, it's good enough. And I would have known we got a good enough cover versus what I think is an awesome cover.
I'm curious to know about the other 49 covers. What are some of the ideas that you passed on to get to the one you like?
Well, like with anything in life, you start with kind of the easy metaphors when you're launching something. So what do you think about when you think about the phrase do-over?
Was there a kickball cover?
It was an eraser. A big pink eraser that said do-over on it.
Right,
or, a bunch of crumpled paper. Or, so you go through kind of all these really obvious metaphors. You go through photos. Let's have a guy on the cover with a flag. And then you go, it's too masculine. And there's all this conversation that goes into it. And then what they created that's 3D and the letters have motion and it's evocative and it's bright and it's bold. And it's not red. I had to get away from red. No offense to the title. I had to move away from red because if I did one more red book, I'm locked into red as my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this definitely pops.
Yeah. So I'm
Yellow,
excited about it.
It's like if you had a black light.
Yeah. If you want to do that, feel free to tweet that out.
Put it on Instagram and tag Jon Acuff.
Do-Over book. # Do-Over book.
When we talk about the yellow book cover, I've got to mention what your wife did to help promote this thing.
Sure.
I thought this was like the coolest promotion and tasty, by the way.
Yeah. Well, so Jenny made 1 million cookies, like flatbread kind of cookies that they look like Pop-Tarts. People thought, and which is such a funny thing if you think about it, like how hipster are we that we make organic, locally sourced Pop-Tarts? Like, I'm not into those mainstream Pop-Tarts. We make them like, these are, this is huckleberry that we grow in our backyard. And it takes like 92 hours, but at the end, it's a really delicious, connected to the earth Pop-Tart.
Sweetened with honey,
local honey. Like none of these foreign bees.
Absolutely.
These guys are jerks. And so Jenny made these cookies and she matched the color of the book, which took a long time, and then she used 3 different icing colors to try to mimic the phrase do-over. And that's why it's a family affair. Like, that's why it's so great that we're pushing in the same direction.
Day in the life of Jon Acuff. It's not just about that 1 hour on stage or a few minutes on Instagram people see. What do you do all day?
It really depends on the day, but a lot of it is trying to come up with new ideas. A lot of it is email, and I hate email. I hate email. But a lot of it is working through email, working on relationships. A lot of the stuff that I talk about in the book where I kind of have these 4 buckets of like hustle, character, skills, and relationships. And I go, okay, I need to put something into this bucket or I need to invest in this. Today's day specifically is got up, hung out with my wife and my daughter. My other daughter was at a sleepover. Got to do some family time and then answered a bunch of emails, wrote some articles, and then do a couple podcasts. The thing I have to fight for is writing time. Sometimes I'll fill my calendar so full out of fear because writing is scary to me still. It's my passion, but it's scary too. because it matters so much to me. So if I'm not careful, I'll fill my calendar with a bunch of stuff to avoid the thing I know I'm supposed to do.
As an author myself, I'm curious to know what your writing looks like. Do you have big interrupted chunks of time that you write, or is it in between flights?
It's both. One of the things I'm working on is trying to block off weeks at a time to write. The challenge is the more successful you become, the more invitations to ignore your craft you get. Because of some of the success, which has been awesome, I get a lot of invitations to do stuff that has nothing to do with writing. And that's what Adrian, who I mentioned, was getting at. The other point he said was that he watches authors release one book and it's really good, and then they become consultants, and now they work for all these companies. And they make a lot of money, but their next book isn't good because they haven't spent good time doing it.
We see this in music all the time. The first album is really great. Second album, not so good. They call it the sophomore slump. And the reason for that is you've had 10, maybe 15 years to work on your first album.
1 year to repeat.
1 year to repeat, maybe even 6 months.
Well, and not a real year either. You're on the road, so you're disconnected from real humans. And then you write an album about what it's like to date Heidi Klum, and like nobody can relate to that. They're like, oh man, that must be so hard.
Well, and you've also tested that material, and that's something that you're doing all the time. If you were a band, you'd be playing the songs in front of people. They'd be giving you feedback. You get to see what people react to. And with you, you're doing that with ideas.
Yeah, and I'm testing them in live settings where I'll talk to somebody and I'll be able to gauge the audience's reaction, or they'll ask me a question on it. I had this idea about when you hustle, you enter into this season of yes, and somebody really challenged me on, like, no, you have to say no a lot too. And it helped shape that. That's the kind of stuff I really like to do. And it comes in seasons. Spring and fall are kind of speaking season. There's a lot of conferences. Summer, I try to be around with the family more. December and January are my best writing months. So I need to write books in those months because it's quiet and I can be introspective. But you keep learning. Like I learned, this is going to sound so dumb, but it's true. Like I learned I like a commute. Like I complained and whined about my commute constantly when I worked at a corporate job. And then I got off on my own and realized I need that separation.
That downtime.
The decompression. Like I need to go somewhere. Jenny's like, I love you. Now, can you leave the house, which is the space that this is my office.
Yeah.
And you've set up residency in my office and I would like you to go somewhere. And so you learn stuff like that.
I think that's one of the issues with life that we face now that we didn't have 15, 20 years ago, certainly with mobile phones and the phones being connected to the internet. Everybody always knows where you are. We don't get that time away. I was talking to Dory Clark, and she talked about innovation. She says that it comes from taking this time away from things. But that's hard to do, especially when you're experiencing FOMO.
Yeah.
You experience that?
Oh, nonstop. For me, the way I always describe FOMO is it's like you're standing in front of a wall of combination locks and you're one number away from opening it and the whole wall falls down. And whatever your vision of perfection or stress-free living is, that's going to happen when you get that last number. And every opportunity is somebody holding up a number. And you feel like, what if especially with a book launch, I think, what if there's a podcast I'm supposed to do? Or what if there's an article? What if there's a thing? And
you know what's scary about it? It's like an election. You don't want to be the day after the election when you've lost thinking, I could have done
no. Yeah,
this.
that is a huge challenge because the thing for me is I don't want the day after, the week after the launch, whatever. I don't want weeks from now somebody to go, hey, man, there's this really simple thing you could have done with like an email list that would have sold like 19 million books. Why didn't you do it? And then I go, because I'm an idiot. And now I'll never get to write another book because I didn't know the super secret ninja trick that everybody knew that was obvious, but nobody told me.
Do you have more thoughts on that? Because I think so many people are led by fear. We've talked earlier on Red Podcast 140, which is at redpodcast.com/140, about carrots versus stick. People are going away from something rather than towards something. So you've got these opportunities. You're Jon Acuff.
Which doesn't feel like, I don't feel like that. Like that I'm Jon Acuff. Like another author said that to me the other day because I was worried about some book launch stuff. And they're like, are you kidding? Like it's gone well. And I was like, has it? So like maybe there's some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's false
perspective though, right? Because 20 years ago, you'd have had a different perspective than you do now. You're like, oh man, I'd be killing to make $1 with my
And
books.
some of it, I don't know if it's false humility. Like I don't, to be honest with you. But like as far as like going towards the right thing or trying to escape something that's fearful, I think, again, a lot of it is relationship. Because I think sometimes we can trick ourselves into like anything that we think is a good decision. Like we're able to talk ourselves into just about anything. When somebody says to me, like, why did you do that? Like something I've made a mistake on, they go, why did you do that? I always think, because I thought it would work. Like, I thought it was a good thing to do.
Sounds like there's a story there.
Yeah, well, I mean, just about anything in my life where I've made a big mistake, I made it in isolation. And maybe it was out of impatience or rush or like even just, okay, as an example, I've written all these articles during the book launch for different news organizations, and I'd send them to Penguin, and I'd send them to my agents, and I'd send them to other people, and they would say things on them and go, hey, this last paragraph isn't clear. Like this week, I sent something to my publisher for a news organization. They said, it's the wrong idea. Another example. So Penguin said to me, hey, we want you to meet the media. Let's rent a space up here at the Museum of Modern Art. Like, would that work for you to have a lunch with the media? And I was like, I guess. Like, mind blown.
Right.
So then I did the presentation. It's a 15-minute presentation for 5 people in the Penguin offices. The first thing they said was, you need to cut the part about Airbnb and you need to cut the part about Uber. And I said, well, why? And they said, because we're exhausted of those topics in New York. Every day we hear about those topics in the newspaper. So maybe in Tennessee that works because you're not inundated with that conversation.
Right.
In New York, if you open with that, if you lead with that to a New York media crowd, they're not going to listen.
Right.
And so then I get to choose the humility of like, wow, that's really great feedback. Let me cut that out. Let me respond to that. Versus the fear of if I show it to somebody, they'll give me something. They won't like it. They won't like me. So I just won't show it to anybody. I'll launch it first. And then like the patience and the timing and the vulnerability of sharing it with a small audience first that gives you feedback to make it better, like that's not easy for me, but you have to do it.
I'm so glad that you're saying that. We've all seen, like an old person, for example, describe, instead of Sears, she's going to call it Sears and Roebucks.
Sure.
They don't move with the times, and then it gets to the point where your message is being lost. Either it's generational or situational or things have just moved on, but we're so into our own ideas that we don't change them. But as somebody who's going out in the public, you've got to continuously do that. And I don't think we think about that stuff.
No, and it's scary to me.
Yeah, it's real scary because the world is changing. If you don't change, the world is passing you by.
Oh, it's going to leave you. And I just feel like that's getting faster and faster. I think in one of the episodes we talked about having somebody 10 years ahead that you're in a relationship with. If you want to stay relevant, have someone 10 years behind, because that person is seeing things you're not seeing, is going to challenge what you think. Like, it's so funny how stuck we all become when we kind of get into our own little bubble. I mean, the city I live in Franklin, Tennessee. Like, you talk about a bubble. I have friends in Franklin that are like, I can't go all the way to Nashville. Like, why? Let's just.
It's kind of like Long Island is to New York.
Yeah,
it's a suburb, very wealthy,
with less rappers probably. And so, I mean, the hip hop shop closed. We had a hip hop shop downtown.
Really?
Yeah, downtown Franklin, like right off the antique square.
You've just blown my mind.
I know.
Man.
It's closed though, so it's too late, dude. If you wanted to go in and get a hoodie, you don't have access to that. But no, so I think we get stuck. And so when I meet somebody that's 21 or 22, you can't be arrogant and be like, and we've joked on a couple of these podcasts about like the 22-year-old life coach. Like, that's a silly thing.
Right.
I want you to develop some expertise if you're going to tell somebody else how to live their life. But you're arrogant as a 39-year-old if you think, I can't learn something from a 21-year-old. I can't learn something from a 17-year-old.
Yep.
And the stuff they're seeing and how they're seeing it, it's completely different than how I'm seeing it. I just keep learning that. So we were at an event together, you and I, and this 21-year-old kid stood up and said, hey, you know what? I've managed a company. I've got my own company. I have 12 employees. And I thought, that's awesome. Like, I'm going to talk to him because he's doing some things I'm not doing. He's seeing some things I'm not doing. He said to me, you got to be on Meerkat, not Periscope. And I said, okay, like, tell me about that, because I don't know.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think there's always a danger of, again, coming from the music business, what's hot, what's not, what are the kids like, and when you're just chasing those trends, you still have to remain true to yourself.
It can't be fake. You can't just put on whatever cool coat is the new cool coat, because then you end up being like the youth minister that Googles popular teen phrases. It's like, what's the deal with ladies? Zsa, huh? Is she fat with a PH? And no, you still have to be you. You still have to be true to who you are, because otherwise you're not authentic. And you see people that do that and you're like, not that you have to dress old fashioned, but there's certain jeans that at a certain age, you don't need to wear those jeans.
Right.
Like, there is a classy version of that jean to wear.
There has to be some congruency. We've all seen that kid who's maybe a jock and then all of a sudden he starts to become cool, does what the cool kids do in high school, and it's like, that doesn't work because this guy's not feeling it, right? Now, he could pull it off if he really felt it, but it's an inside thing.
Well, you could pull it off for a little while, too. anybody can fake it for a little while, but it's the stuff that you really care about that over long term is going to keep trying to come back through. You can't keep bumping that with fads and bumping that with trends. I had somebody say to me, it just feels like there's so many to learn. It's overwhelming and technology changes every day. And I think that's true. But also I just celebrated there was no party, but I had 7 years on Twitter. So there are some things that, have been around and it's okay to invest in them. But, and I'm going to figure out, does Snapchat work for what I'm trying to do? And if it doesn't, then I'm not going to force my way onto that and go, hey, teenagers, I'm the cool uncle. Like, if that doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for me.
That's why I think Do Over is such a great book, because this is something that you are totally congruent with. The last 18 months, if you look at what's happened to you, you have been in a do-over.
Yeah, still in one.
It's not the memoir written 50 years later when you've started to have revisionist thoughts and memories of what happened.
That's the garbage part of leadership. Like when leaders only talk about the successes they've had or something where they failed 20 years ago and don't care about it anymore. And you sit in the crowd and just go like, well, none of that's true. Yeah. And so for me, like the way I look at it is old school authors, old school leaders, old school whatever, used to believe if I share my weaknesses, people won't trust my strengths. And new school is if I pretend I don't have some, they won't trust my strengths. And so that's where for me, like it's from the trenches and I'm still learning. And people sometimes are so disappointed because they'll say, where do you get all these ideas about fear? And I'll say, I'm afraid a lot. And then I write them down.
Yeah, there's not absence of fear here.
No. I mean, like, I got up at 5 a.m. this morning because, this is an intense week. I'm nervous and excited about that. And so, yeah, anyone who thinks that it's like that it's different or that it looks a certain way, but on Instagram, it's not that way.
Well, the book is amazing. It's called Do Over, Rescue Monday, Reinvent Your Work and Never Get Stuck. It's available at Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, wherever there are bookstores left. It is there.
Local bookstores have it. Yeah, it's always awesome to go in and support a bookstore.
Any final thoughts? This is the end of Do Over Week, and we've had a great run, but is there something that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, this has just been really, really fun.
Well, I appreciate you being here in the Red Room.
Yeah, I love that you live where I live and that we get to do this, and I love that, you came to the event 18 months ago, and I'm always recommending your book. One of the things, because this episode was about how do you do what I do, one of the things is you read books that other people in your space aren't reading. And so, for me to read a book about being a musician and being a successful musician really helped me understand how to be an author because there's overlap there. And I think a lot of authors don't get out of their space. So if you want to be an author, read books about being a musician. If you want to be a great musician, look at how public speakers do it. And it's all connected.
In the end, what musicians do to build an audience, to connect with people, it's the same thing that comics do, a person like you who's speaking on stage, an author.
Ben Rector, I've learned so much from Ben Rector, this local musician here.
He lives down the street.
Yeah, lives down the street.
Yep.
He was building his audience via Facebook and mailing lists for years before I even knew that was a thing. So that when he goes, that dude sells out 4,000 person shows.
Yeah.
And when he goes back to a community, he's been there 10 times, and he has a mailing list specifically of those people who had an amazing experience last time and are going to have an amazing experience next time. That's what I'd say is keep learning. I hope you'll read Do Over. You can read the first chapter at doover.me if you want to check out the first chapter first.
And there's a great community on Facebook if you want to connect with other people that are having their own Do Over because you don't want to do it alone.
No, we're not supposed to.
Not when you don't have to.
Nope.
Well, Jon, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to Red Podcast. We will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.
Really jumped up far from a Fletch 2 book report to president of IBM. That's quite a leap.
No. Yeah, here's my burst.
At least it's not grandiose,
I'm thinking big. I'm inspired by this book.
Yeah. Why am I doing small stuff?
I'm inspired by this book. All right, here we go.